Let's talk.
John Brown.
I've been looking forward to doing this interview for a while now because my next guest is Paul Henderson. He is the author of A Spy in the Family, a quite astonishing story of Vaclav Jelnik, and I've probably got that name wrong, also known as Erwin van Haarlem, with unseen documents from the UK, the Netherlands, and the Czech Republic. It is a story that, when I started reading it, I just had to sort of pinch myself and stand back, because it's a story of deceit and one could say emotional deceit as well. I'm delighted to say that I'm joined live on the line from Gran Canaria, I believe, author of A Spy in the Family, Paul Henderson. Paul, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good to have you with us, my friend, this morning. So, this is a fascinating tale, and it's quite a disturbing tale, an emotionally draining tale, Paul.
Well, you've summed it up beautifully, Giles, because it really is. And the story begins in World War II in Holland for an incredible lady called Johanna van Haarlem, who was a teenage girl living with her family in The Hague when the German occupiers came in. And the story begins with her being attacked by a German soldier, and she became pregnant. She was relying on support from her family. She found it very difficult to tell them about what had happened because of the pregnancy. And when she did, her father threw her out of the home and told her to go to a clinic for single mothers in Amsterdam, where she had the child who was called Erwin van Haarlem. She then goes back to the family home again in The Hague. The father still would not have her in the home. He was a businessman, a sort of pillar of the community. He saw this as a disgrace. He was also a religious zealot. And he then ordered her onto a train that took her east to eventually Czechoslovakia, where she was forced to hand baby Erwin over to an orphanage.
I mean, had hostilities ceased at this time, though, or was this still going on?
Hostilities were still going on. It was absolute chaos. The train was going through Germany. The Russians were coming in from the east. Yeah. From the west, and she was caught in the middle. She tried to find some work and leave young Erwin with a woman to look after him while she was at work. That didn't work well for her, and eventually the Red Cross said there's only one thing for it. He should be put in an orphanage in Bohemia, and that's where she left him.
I mean, it's quite incredible to think, isn't it? With all the chaos going on with the war and the suffering that the Dutch people go through with the hunger winter, and, you know, and obviously we all know about the trains that go east full of the Jewish population who are never seen again. I suppose we would think, because luckily we are perhaps more enlightened, you know, what sort of father would say to his daughter and the newborn, you know, get out of my sight. It just as an insight with all the horrors that are going on at that time in the Netherlands, that this poor woman has to travel across a war-torn Europe with an infant and then give it away.
Yes, it's absolutely horrendous for her. And she describes in the book how that the moment that she hands the child over, the young Erwin over, and she's absolutely distraught. And in her mind, she's saying to herself, I've got to come back and find him sometime. And the orphanage and the Red Cross said that they would eventually contact her once the war ended and try to reunite them. And she just so long, for many decades after.
Yeah, because the thing is, because, you know, as people of the British Isles, we perhaps are removed from the chaos that was happening in Europe, both as the regime fell in Berlin, and then afterwards with people scrabbling to get before, as Churchill says, the Iron Curtain comes down. And then at that time, people are destroying records, people are displaced. You know, a small baby in an orphanage in Bohemia, it's hardly top of anybody's lists. So it is understandable that she loses contact, and many people never find family again. I mean, not only because of some of them going to the camps, but in terms of the general turmoil, and people disappear, and people take their own lives, and people, because of the issues that are going on, because they've lost everything within a very short period of time, Paul.
Yes. You've actually summed it up perfectly, because for this young woman, we've got to realise that she had the baby when she was only 19. So she's having to get back to Holland during that chaos as well, through Germany, and then eventually get to Holland, where even though the Germans had left, the Allies had defeated them, the Germans have fled, she's then got to rebuild her life. But in the back of her mind the whole time is, where is Erwin? What's his life like now? How can I find him? And eventually the Red Cross do attempt to find her. And initially they make contact at the family home where Johanna has started to live again. And the father was turning them away, and Johanna was unaware of this. So
she goes back to the Netherlands. She tries to start her life again, and what path leads to this? You say Hollywood ending, when if we were doing this as a Hollywood movie, when apparently the child is found and all is well.
Well, now the thing is, what happens then is that she eventually is told by her father that there's been an attempt by the Red Cross to bring them together. And a Red Cross official turned up at the home, actually, and with a document, and it was an ultimatum. The document was, you either pay back the amount of money that it's cost to have Erwin in the home during these years, or he goes out for adoption. And her father is standing over her and pointing at the document and saying, sign here, this child will be better with adopted parents. And under enormous strain, she signs that document. It breaks her heart. But still, she decides secretly she will try to find her son, Erwin van Haarlem, somehow, somewhere behind the Iron Curtain. She had, terrible fears of where he could have ended up, as any mother would do. The imagination of, could he be, in Siberia somewhere? What's happened to him?
Mm. And how long is it then? Is it sort of the mid-50s then that she makes contact, or contact is made?
So these contacts I'm telling you about with the Red Cross and signing away, in the sort of late 40s and early 50s. And then the next significant period is for her searching for her son through the 60s and 70s as best she could, because she couldn't travel the Iron Curtain.
Sure.
And then she receives a message from the International Red Cross saying, we've finally found Erwin for you, and he is in London. And if you would like, we will contact him and see if he will have a reunion. And she puts her hands together. She thinks, this is fantastic. Hopefully he will meet me. She's full of anxiety because she's not sure of how he will react. What has he been told? Does he just think he's been abandoned by a terrible mother? And anyway, contact is made. And this Erwin in London, in fact, was a Czech spy who had the identity of the real Erwin van Haarlem. And her contact to him by letter, sends him into a tailspin because he's not quite sure what to do. Can my legend be exposed? So through thousands of thousands of Secret Service documents that we've discovered in the Czech Republic about the spy, whose real name is Václav Zelenik, reveal that he's in great consternation and he's communicating with his spy masters in Prague, and effectively Moscow was controlling them, about how to deal with this. And there was a debate between the secret coded messages going between London and Prague. And eventually it's decided that, yes, he should go along with it. And in fact, it would even strengthen his legend. And he would be deeper in cover. And there is his mother with him.
It's just, I mean, you just feel so badly for Joanna because it just, we think about it's just, we can get very carried away with, the Cold War and spies and intelligence, but you take over the documents of a person who is presumed disappeared, dead, especially children. It's the modus operandi. And then, so they've sent this agent over thinking he can have this disappeared child, or this child is never going to come back across the Iron Curtain. And then the mothers, and you would think his handlers would go, we would go, okay, get him out of there because it's going to be exposed. But it's so desperate because they think, wonderful, it gives us an even further in, and she must be over the moon, to put it mildly, that her son has been. In fact, she hasn't seen him since he was tiny. So of course she is going to be predisposed to believe that this is her son. Her prayers have been answered. I mean, it just breaks your heart, Paul.
Well, it does, and the fact that the International Red Cross had contacted her immediately, she's got to accept it.
Sure.
And not only that, she was desperately wanting to accept that this was her son. And for the next decade, that reuniting that was so false got stronger and stronger because he was a highly trained espionage agent for from behind the Iron Curtain, and he was convincing everybody in his path, including his mother, that he really was Erwin van Harlem.
We're not going to go. I mean, obviously, this all breaks down horrendously, but we want people to obviously order the book and read it, Paul. So we're not going to give the whole thing away. How did you come across this story then? How did you find it? And B, how do you research this and get the primary sources? Because it's very, I suppose it's opened up a lot, but what was your first intro to this, please, Paul?
Yeah, okay. So in 1989, I had just joined the Daily Mail in London, and my colleague David Gardner, who is the co-author of this book with me, was a crime correspondent. He was covering the trial of Erwin van Harlem at the Old Bailey in London, the Central Criminal Court, and it emerged that the spy had been getting intelligence about the Polaris nuclear submarine system that we had, President Reagan's Star Wars, and he was also infiltrating Jewish groups campaigning for the freedom of Russian Jews. And at that time, it was an amazing story that was making the front pages. The tagline was The Spy with No Name, because everybody knew this wasn't his real name, but he wasn't saying what his real identity was. And I was in the office in Fleet Street while David was at the Old Bailey, and the news editor said, right, we need you to go to Holland to find Johanna van Harlem. She's an incredible story. TV, radio, other newspapers are looking for her. Do all you can to, find her and see if she will give you an interview. So I went straight to Heathrow Airport, flew to Amsterdam. I came out of the airport. All I had was a name, Johanna van Harlem. I found a taxi driver who had a piece of new modern technology, which was a mobile phone fitted into his car. It's hard to believe this was new technology, but it was a massive breakthrough in those days. And the other good thing is he was prepared to work all the hours of day and night on this story with me. So we started, and we started getting clues in The Hague. David was communicating with me to the car, which was amazing, from London with the information he was getting from his police and security services. And eventually I did find Johanna in a small town near the German border, but in Holland. And initially she was really concerned because she had been the star witness at the Old Bailey trial, and she was probably afraid of retaliation. She didn't know what was going to happen. But in the end, after about 24 hours, she decided that she could be interviewed. And then she started telling me her incredible story.
I mean, it's quite incredible that she wanted to be interviewed, because she's been at the Old Bailey, terrifying prospect for anybody who's not used to being at the Old Bailey. She's had that horrendous realization that all her dreams are shattered because this is not her son. And even worse, this is a cuckoo in her nest. This is a spy who is being betrayed her. And you could have understood with all the trauma that she's been through, she'd just go, I don't want to talk to anybody anymore. But it just shows the resilience of the character of this, of the same woman or the same girl who was 19, who'd been assaulted, who'd had a child, who'd been through the hunger winter, who'd been rejected by her father. And yet she was quite open to speak to you after only 24 hours, Paul.
Well, she is one of the most courageous, resilient people I've ever met. And she's 100 years old now and still living in Holland. And who could imagine that she could last a century after everything that she went through? Because I certainly couldn't. And she, in her mind, when I was interviewing her, although she was telling me her story in detail through two wars, there was Second World War and then the Cold War, etc., she wanted to find her real son. And that's what was driving her on. She had to find young Erwin.
Yeah.
I teamed up with her and we went to Czechoslovakia together.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's leave them with a cliffhanger, shall we, Paul, so they get the thing. But you travel with her to Bohemia, which is where the orphanage is, and to look for her son. And again, I talk about Hollywood movies, but ye gods, Paul, I mean, how the trepidation that you must have going there with this woman who's now in advanced age. You know the backstory. You know her heart has been not even broken, but cut into tiny pieces twice. And then there is this moment, and we'll leave it at that. But it must have been one of the most. Listen, you work in the press, you get stories like this, and they're always sort of like, there are no happy endings, but then you get a story like this, and you must have just gone, good grief, talk about an inspirational ending.
Yeah, well, it is an inspirational ending, and I'm not going to say what did happen exactly, but it's such a unique story. I can't tell you. You need to be reading it to take in exactly what happens, not only in the build-up through those wars and being thrown out by her father, but then all the efforts that she makes along with me and a great photographer called Clive Limpkin from the Daily Mail, and the investigations that we make. And it's interesting what you're saying about Hollywood movie, because an international show business columnist based in LA is Baz Bamigboy.
Oh, yes, of course. Baz, blimey.
He's put out there on because Baz, I was with him at a launch party only a week ago, and he's put out on his, I think it's Twitter, that this would make a gripping film or a miniseries. And we have been told by other professionals that it's got great cinematic value. I must admit, I agree with them, but then I would, wouldn't I?
Exactly. What I like about it, though, as well, because, I mean, we're going to that period where we've got the 80th anniversary, we're going up to VE Day, and that'll be VJ, and people get, and obviously we lost the last of the few earlier this week, and people always go talk about the grand sweep, and they always think about, you know, the D-Day, the Bulge, Arnhem, these whole things, but a lot of people don't reflect on the personal stories of how this affects people personally, and the lives that are turned up and down, because we're all thinking about Patton or Monty or whatever else, or Churchill. And I think what your book does brilliant is it captures those human stories, because at the end of the day, it is a story. It's all about people rather than strategic or technical maneuvers.
It is. This is the other thing. I hope that people will get the book, and when they're reading it, take interest in the psychological side of this story, because it's highly, highly emotional. But at the same time, we're learning about Soviet bloc agents and how they operate. But the overwhelming element of this is Johanna Van Harlem's story, and it's very personal, it's very human, it's deeply emotional.
The book is called A Spy in the Family, the incredible story of espionage and betrayal. It's by Paul Henderson, who was speaking today, and Dave Gardner. You can order it via our own virtual bookstore. Just go click on the link. And I urge you, because absolutely, and as you know, listeners, you know, I like my history, but this has absolutely blew my tiny mind. Paul, if people want to follow you, I mean, presumably the websites or anything like that, or they just key your name into the search engine and you'll pop up in the nicest possible way.
Yeah, I have entered the world of Instagram, so they can attempt to get me on there.
What are you, Paul Henderson 15 or Paul Henderson 1, or how can they find you?
Hendo 1929.
Hendo 1929. You're looking good then, Paul, in that point. Listen, it's an absolutely amazing story with a wonderful ending as well. But we go and order the book. The book is called A Spy in the Family. It's by David Gardner and Paul Henderson, who we've been speaking to today. Paul, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.